Welcome to this fourth episode of Prima Talks. So in this episode, I want to talk about one of my favorite films, Black Swan. I'm going to reference this analysis called Perfection, Control, and Inner Authority, a Black Swan Symbolic Review by Colleen Chabot. I overall like reading analysis on my favorite movies, and I feel like she covered a lot of aspects of the film that not many people kind of look at. And I want to look at this through a lens of, how is femininity portrayed in American films versus, films in other parts of the world, specifically in Mexico. So last episode, I covered telenovelas, another form of media filmography in Mexico. And just to put it in simple terms, I kind of briefly covered the feminine and how, in simple terms, feminine equals happiness, equals love, this kind of trope. Whereas I feel like in American films, specifically in the US, we see a lot of themes of hyper-femininity being demonized and, come out as a solely seen as this binary for women. And so I feel like Black Swan is a really good example of this, especially if we're comparing it and contrasting it to Mexican telenovelas. So in Black Swan, Nina, we start off, the main character, the female protagonist is Nina, this ballerina who has finally gotten this role that she's dreamed of, the Swan Princess in Swan Lake. So Nina, her relationship with her mother is a really big, I feel like, theme to this movie. So essentially she and her mother are very close. Her mother is the figure of, I would say, the feminine restraint, as her mom often polices her. She polices her body, her career, things like that. And so her mom was a ballerina as well before having Nina, and she often relays this to her, telling her that because she gave up her career to raise Nina, that Nina has to be the best at ballet, has to be better than her. So Nina grows up with this idea of perfection and polices herself as well to be perfect. This version of perfect being very hyper feminine. We see imagery of, this kind of idea portrayed through her wardrobe and her house a lot. So she's often dressed in, Natalie Portman, Nina's actress, she's often dressed in pinks, whites, light grays, that kind of color combination, to express this this sense of modesty and this theme of modesty and femininity within Nina, because Nina is like this she's seen as very frigid. It's a very big theme in the movie, where her director tells her that she's perfect for the White Swan because she is very self-sacrificing, she's very quiet, soft-spoken, she's very feminine. Whereas the Black Swan is this symbol of freeness, like explorative nature. And so we see the introduction of this character that Nina eventually hyperfixates on because she sees her as something other than herself. This is like this idea of breaking outside of her means. So Mia, this character that symbolizes the Black Swan, is the exact opposite of Nina. Mia, instead, she's often dressed in blacks, heavy makeup. She's seen as this very free and very eccentric character. Again, the exact opposite of Nina. And so Nina, throughout the film, as she becomes hyperfixated on Mia, begins exploring her sexuality, exploring, the realm outside of her home life, of her constant policing. And eventually she, kind of a spoiler if you haven't watched it, but she does end up passing away due to her hyperfixation. There's a lot of other themes of psychosis throughout the film, but I feel like in like a more face value way, it's kind of pushed that the feminine equaled rage, equaled frustration that led to Nina's death. And, you know, we see themes of like hyper femininity being demonized in various different ways. In this way, it's kind of more it criticizes the constraints and gender roles that we put on women, in that, you know, it showcases femininity as being very limiting to one's identity, and how this kind of developed within Nina. You know, in other movies, it's kind of more face value, where, you know, we have movies like Mean Girls, where hyperfemininity was seen as catty, you know, all these perpetuations of feminine equaling, or women not being good characters if they're, you know, hyper feminine. And so I kind of want to look at another movie that kind of worked as, again, another criticism, I guess, of what we view femininity as. The Barbie movie, it aimed at uplifting the femininity, but I feel like there was also still a sense of rejection on, you know, Barbie's part. In the film, Barbie breaks out of her plastic mold into this version of herself where she is a real woman. That being, you know, kind of leaving Barbie land and all the pinks, all this like kind of fantasy of the feminine behind. And whereas I feel like, again, this is a really, you know, face value. It's a film that moves forward, trying to combat the idea of hyper feminine being demonized in our films typically. I still feel like it has an underlying rejection again, an underlying kind of mold that femininity means to be constrained, to be kept in a box. And, you know, what does this mean for women who do enjoy the feminine, who do enjoy these kind of ideas and aren't doing it as like out of constraint? And for me, I just feel like I enjoy both films, to be honest, but I feel like it's just very hard to grasp both concepts simultaneously. And, you know, we're kind of not aware of this demonization that's still kind of happening. But obviously, I feel like we're making really good moves towards leaving it behind. I feel like Black Swan, not as great as Barbie in, you know, moving forward. But I guess like the criticizing of, you know, this among women who do feel constrained to femininity, because it is still prevalent amongst a lot of women, can hold very true and is very, very prevalent in certain women. And yeah, I would love to see more films that embrace the feminine in a more positive way, or that show that both can coexist, unlike the Black Swan, which has, you know, either, you're, you know, both sides. There's not really a medium. It's either you're feminine, you're the white swan, or you're the black swan and you're free. And yeah, thank you.